Darrell E. Brooks gets his sentence. So we'll be talking about what the sentence was, what that means, and where we go down from there. And I think give a good, nice send-off to the man who did such a terrible thing on such a terrible day. So we'll talk about that, what's going on with that, and where we go from there. In other news, McCarthy and McConnell both win their bids to lead their parties in closed-door meetings away from the opposite parties. Now we will see if somebody can come in and firebomb them and make sure that they can't get into their positions of power. But, you know, it's going to be interesting to sit and watch it and see what happens with those parties. In other news, the digital dollar has started. Some banking giants and the New York Fed have started a 12-week digital dollar pilot to see if people actually have an appetite for this, which could mean the end of crypto. But we'll talk about that and where we go from there and what that means. And San Francisco has announced the launch of a new guaranteed income system, but it is only if you are transgender. However, no questions asked. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome to post-midterm season. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, we're going to have to go honor system on whether or not I actually have a microphone or not, and you guys can probably screw with me at this point. I'm actually looking over at my monitor, and I've got my tablet on right now, so I'm probably going to bump that up for volume, and you'll hear it over the microphone for just a moment. But I can tell you right now that I have absolutely no tracking bar whatsoever for my audio, and I don't know why. I didn't notice it until after I was live, but yeah, I'm looking over there and I noticed that the music bar wasn't bumping, the desktop audio bar wasn't bumping, and I saw that there is looks like a JavaScript error code sitting where that's supposed to be, and then my microphone volume, that's not showing up either, so bear with me for just a moment. I'm actually going to crank this up a little bit and make sure that I can hear myself talk, as much as I hate hearing that. So give me just... Okay, we've got volume. Good enough. Wow, I really need to do beard maintenance. I can see myself in the forward monitor right now. Oh man, do I need to do beard maintenance. Anyway, my name is Jay Edgar. Welcome to Contemporary with technical difficulties, because if they didn't have technical difficulties, would it really be contemporary at this point? My name is Jay Edgar. We have got a bunch to go over here. We've got the Darrell Brooks sentence has come down. We have got election news. It looks like McCarthy and McConnell, barring some major bombing from members of their own party, will be the heads of their parties on the other side. We don't know what's going to happen with the Democrat side yet. There is talk, by the way, that, and I don't know if this is true or not, I think that most of this is just going to be rumor, because I don't know if California state charter will allow this. This is not officially news because I didn't put it on the stack, but there are rumors and grumblings around that Nancy Pelosi will step down and give her seat away to her daughter, Christina, which I don't know if that's legal in their California's charter, and that does change state to state. I know that a lot of people are bringing up the fact that that's how Murkowski got in, is because her dad gave her the seat, but number one, that is the Senate, and number two, that is a different state entirely. So different chamber with different rules and a different state entirely. I do think that if Nancy Pelosi steps down in California, her seat will go vacant until the next term, in the middle of her term. I don't think California does special election. I know Texas does because that's how Mayra Flores got in the first time. I didn't even look to see if Mayra Flores got in the second time. Did Mayra Flores win? We were so caught up in Boebert and Green and everything else, I guess I never looked. Let me look at that right now before we get in. Now that I'm thinking about it. No, Mayra Flores did not win. 99% reporting, District 34 went to Vicente Gonzalez. So, apparently that didn't go the way that everybody was planning. But anyway, we've got a lot to go over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, Overruled with KTZed, Mr. Behavior over on the Twitch side if you like video games and especially video game development. And also, go check out the PJ Patriot Show and the No Gimmicks Podcast. Go check out all these great friends to liberty, freedom, and bring you news and culture from the common man for the common man. Because, that's always been an aspiration of mine. Because we have so much time where all we do is listen to news from people who wear suits that cost more than our houses. Even like the missing link ones, like Ben Shapiro or the Young Turks, are still massively rich, loaded people who are trying to tell you what it is you're supposed to think about politics, who have never had to make some of the same decisions you do. I am very poor. I'm moving across the state because I was so poor. Chasing down that dollar and trying to make a better life for myself and a potential future family, even though I think that ship has sailed on my point. Trying to make a better life for a future family, and I've had to make some of the same decisions some of you guys have had to. And I'm not saying that you're all poor, but I'm saying that you're probably closer to where I am than where Anderson Cooper is. So go check out all that great programming, and let's get down into the news and see what we have going on here. That is going to bother me for the rest of the show. But we're 11 minutes in on the stream, and some of that's just intro music. But I'm going to look over here. I'm going to panic. I'm going to say, man, how long have I going without volume? How long has my microphone been off? But it's on. I heard myself. So let's get into it. Let's get started. Let's get myself off the screen before we get started, and let's look in at the Dow. The Dow is at 553.83. Let's get the live chat up too. Love to see what you guys are saying. Oh, that's right. We're using the other one this time. All right. Let's get into the Dow and let's see what they're doing. 553.83. That is down 39.09. And it looks like it just kind of jump roped through the line yesterday, all day. Kind of going up, kind of going down. It didn't move very far, and just it's steady, which is not a bad thing, especially given some of the chaos that we're seeing in the political climate and the fact that right before they give up the power in the House, it looks like there is going to be another massive omnibus spending bill that gets pushed out to hopefully carry the Democrats through until they can go back to try to win the House again. So we'll see what's happening with that and where that goes. And the finance thing, especially since they didn't wait until after January's new congressional seating date, makes me wary of what it is that they're going to do and how much they're going to inflate the currency before they go. Looking at Bitcoin, which is on a slight rise as of the taking of this, however still down in the day, $16,486 and 10 US cents, down $159 and 10 US cents, or just short of 1%. Bringing us out to the 5 days so we can see what happened yesterday, and it did remain steady, although a fairly steep drop to start off and then just kind of leveling out as it goes. Bitcoin, of course, being the safe cryptocurrency that Soccer Mom America knows about and can understand and can go tell her friends that she's still so edgy from the 90s and Gen X. It's a good measure of what we can reasonably say the economy is going to do in the shortest of short terms because that's one of the more liquid assets you have. I mean, if you've got stocks in your 401k, you can go back and sell those off and get some cash within a day or two. But, I mean, if you have Coinbase and you still have PayPal for whatever reason, you can go drop a little bit of Bitcoin and have cash in your hand that day. So it's the more liquid of the assets that are out there, and it's, you know, when people have to go in a hurry to buy gas, diapers, food, etc., that's going to be the first one that they go to if they're holding that. So that's what we see from the Bitcoin. Looking in at the gas prices. On Madison gas prices, on the east side, the BP is to $3.59. The BP on the north side is at $3.40. The Quick Trip entering the Isthmus is at $3.48. The Amoco is at $3.46. The Quick Trip on the far east side is at $3.40. Looking out to the west side, $3.40 also for the Quick Trip. The Exxon is at $3.60 and the Speedway is at $3.60. So we've had a couple stations go up, and most of them go down overnight from the Madison area. Now, of course, your gas prices in your local area may vary from this, but this is a general trend line looking and seeing where we're going with this. I do anticipate the upswing more than the downswing, but there is also the big name out there that it's holiday season. Thanksgiving is just next week, and people are going to want to travel. So the gas companies make their money by volume and not by price at the pump. So the more that or less you have to think about putting gas in your car, your truck, your SUV, your RV, your LUV, or anything else that you need to put fuel in to get across state, across the country, or across town, the better off they're going to be doing. So we will continue to watch this and see what happens. LUV, I would totally rock those if I don't know, because I've never seen anybody have one. But if you could find a way to get a retired mail truck and then, you know, get all the decals off of it, obviously, repaint it, refashion it, that would be a cool thing to drive around in. I would rock that. But I think that they destroy those, so the civilian market can't get them. But that's what they have coming off of that. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. Dow futures, Cisco, Nvidia move on earnings. Key recession signal intensifies. From Ed Carson. Dow futures fell sharply along with the S&P and the Nasdaq, with Nvidia, Macy's, and Cisco earnings in focus. The stock market rally retreated amid weak target earnings and holiday guidance, as well as Micron Technology cutting memory chip production plans. The bond market is flashing brighter recession risks, with the 10-year Treasury yield continuing to tumble while short-end rates hold up high. EV giant Tesla retreated, showing weakest recent performance among the mega-cap stocks. Nvidia, lithium giant Sociedad Química y Minera de Chile, or SQM, that one I actually might abbreviate if we talk about that more on, and Cisco Systems headed headline Wednesday night earnings. Nvidia turned slightly lower in pre-market trade following mixed earnings and guidance. Cisco rose 4% in extended action as Cisco topped fiscal quarter 1 views and guided up on revenue. Cisco stock dipped 1.1% on Wednesday, trading between its 50-day and 200-day lines. SQM stock advanced 1% after earnings and revenue topped quarter 3 views. Shares fell 2.6% on Wednesday, down more than 10% this week. Amid lithium price concerns, the Chilean lithium and fertilizer giant is in a cup base with a 115.82 buy point. SQM stock could be working on a handle. Before Thursday's open, China e-commerce giant Alibaba topped profit forecasts, but a revenue fell short, with cloud computing revenue also missing. Alibaba sank 3%, signaling a test of the 50-day line reclaimed on Tuesday. BJ's Wholesale topped third quarter views. The membership warehouse chain popped 4%, signaling a move above a buy point. Macy's beat quarter 3 earnings and edged past revenue forecast. Macy's stock jumped 6%. Fellow department store chain Kohl's also topped views early Thursday, but withdrew guidance. Shares fell 3.5% before the open. Macy's and Kohl's stock tumbled Wednesday on Target's holiday warning. So some things to watch with that and to see what's happening with the retail. Now they can tell you that retail sales are up bigger and bigger and bigger, but the Christmas season's what's really going to show us where everything is. That's really what's going to push us into the direction of, okay, are we doing well or are we doing poorly right now? And I do think Macy's and Kohl's are going to suffer. I think Target is going to do just fine, and I think Walmart is obviously going to take it walking away because they can sell you your cheap Chinese crap as much as they want and not have to worry about any of the consequences of such. I'm also always surprised to see that there are Kohl's everywhere else in the country. I always thought that was a local chain, because as far as I know, they started in Racine. But that's what they have for that. On the futures, Dow futures declined 0.9 versus fair value. The S&P dropped 1.1. The Nasdaq sank 1.1. Cisco is a Dow, S&P, and Nasdaq component, but Nvidia is a bigger weight on the S&P and the Nasdaq. And by the way, the Cisco, the Nvidia, and things like that are probably going to be taking some suffering as we go. Now, I was actually looking over the week, over last night here, because I do want to do some improvements on my desktop now that I actually have a little bit of money, or have the potential to make a little bit of money. I want to do some improvements there. And I noticed, and at the time when I built this computer, for 16 gigs of RAM was $300. The reason that we have 16 gigs of RAM in this computer right now is because of a generous donation from one who is called Ice and Fire, who donated some old RAM that he had to the cause. And the same thing with the video card, which I'm also probably going to be upgrading in the near future, because at the time, again, regular, what do I have in here? 6 gig memory card, or video card, was over $2,000. Well over $2,000, because the GPU was being used for the Bitcoin mining. As of right now, that market seems to be somewhat dead, and you can get a 10 gig GPU for $650. So that's what we see coming off of that. The 10-year Treasury yield advanced 8 points to 3.77. The St. Louis Fed President James Bullard said a Fed funds rate of 5 to 7 could be needed. Markets have forecasted a peak rate of around 5%. Kansas City Fed President Esther George said labor markets must cool substantially, perhaps needing a recession to cool inflation. Crude oil futures fell 2%. Natural gas climbed more than 1%. Republicans have retaken control of the House, but it will be a wafer-thin majority, far less than expected before Election Day. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate to actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that is what we see coming for that. And that's all the finance that I have for the day. We only did one today because we have so much other news to talk about. And things that I like, by the way. It was thing that I like, but then our friend Arbolt had a tweet out there right before we got live, and I added the things that I like. So things that I like and a thing that I hate at the end of the show today. Let's start with this, though. Top news, especially because I'm a Wisconsin person. But this is also one that we were watching on the independent media much, much more than the mainstream media did. From CNN, Darrell Brooks receives 6 consecutive life sentences plus more than 700 additional years in prison for Waukesha Christmas parade attack. From Elliot C. McLaughlin, Teresa Waldrop, Brad Parks, and Adrienne Brodus. And we can actually watch the moment that he is sentenced. I think that's what they're saying. Darrell Brooks was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of extended supervision on Wednesday for driving his SUV into a crowd of Christmas parade attendees in Waukesha, Wisconsin, last November, killing 6 and wounding dozens more. Brooks, 40, was found guilty by a jury last month on all 76 counts stemming from the 2021 Christmas parade attack, including 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide with the use of a dangerous weapon. On Wednesday, following 2 days of impassioned statements from victims and family members, Judge Jennifer Durow imposed a statutorily mandated sentence, ordering Brooks to serve a life sentence without the possibility of extended supervision for each of the 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide with the use of a dangerous weapon. The sentences will run consecutively, the judge said. Well, he's 40, so one of them is going to run out to the end of his life. 6 of them. In addition to 6 consecutive life sentences for first-degree intentional homicide, Dureau also imposed sentences Wednesday for Brooks, totaling hundreds of years of additional confinement for the remaining 70 counts that he was found guilty on last month. She sentenced Brooks to 17 and a half years for each of the 61 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety with the use of a dangerous weapon. You have absolutely no remorse for anything that you do. You have no empathy for anyone, Dureau told Brooks. Frankly, Mr. Brooks, no one is safe from you. Brooks spoke for more than 2 hours Wednesday, telling the court that he too struggles to understand why this tragic incident happened. That is a question I struggle with myself, Brooks said. The why, the how. How could life ever get this far away from what it should be? You were there! Regardless of what a lot of people may think about me, about who I am, about my family, about my beliefs, I know who I am. God knows who I am, and I don't have any words of anger, he commented. During his remarks, Brooks, who represented himself, only once apologized to the victims of the community of Waukesha, saying that no one can see the remorse that he feels. I want you to know, not only am I sorry for what happened, I'm sorry that you could not see what's truly in my heart. You cannot see the remorse that I have, Brooks told the court. That you cannot count all the tears that I have dropped in this year. Dureau also spoke at length on Brooks' mental health, a topic that his family members spoke about during the hearing. Mental health issues did not cause him to drive into a crowd of people and didn't play a role in the attack, the judge said, citing passages and opinions from 4 mental health evaluations of Brooks from doctors. She said that he understands the difference between right and wrong. She also said Brooks had no remorse nor empathy for anyone. Do the mentally ill sometimes commit atrocious crimes? They do. This is not one of those situations, Dureau said. There are many times good people do bad things. But there are times when evil people do bad things. There is no medication or treatment for a heart that is bent on evil. Prosecution had asked for the harshest penalties for fairly obvious reasons. Prosecutors asked the judge Tuesday to sentence Brooks to the maximum sentence for all convictions stemming from the attack. He deserves the absolute maximum sentence on all counts consecutive, Waukesha County District Attorney Susan Opper told the judge. You saw the videos. This wasn't him plowing into one large group of 50 people at one time and hitting them. It was linear. He hit 1, he kept going. Hit 2, kept going. Hit 3, kept going. All the way down the street. That's consecutive sentences, Your Honor. That's intentional, willful, volitional conduct that warrants consecutive sentences stacked on top of one each other. The other just as he stacked victims as he drove down the road in complete disregard for any other person whatsoever, Opper continued. In addition to 762.5 years in prison for reckless endangerment, Dureau added sentences of 3 years each of the 2 bail jumping convictions and 9 months for domestic battery. Pretty sure at that point, that's just a slap in the face. I'm pretty sure that he's not going to serve 6 years and 9 months for the additional sentences. I think that was just the icing on the cake. Let's listen to what it is that he had to say.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 1 of the information.
And there you just heard a Wisconsin judge announcing a jury's decision finding Darrell Brooks guilty on all counts stemming from last year's Christmas parade attack.
6 people were killed, dozens of others injured when Brooks drove his SUV into the crowd that lined the streets for the annual parade there. CNN's Josh Campbell joins us now. So Josh, explain the jury's decision here.
Well, this jury decision came after a truly tragic and unusual trial. Tragic because of the number of victims that you mentioned there. 6 killed, dozens and dozens injured. Unusual because we saw the suspect, the defendant here, actually representing himself. He previously had an attorney, fired that attorney, withdrew a insanity defense, and decided to represent himself. And we saw 3 weeks of this unusual trial where he was often combative with the judge, with witnesses, with the prosecutor. At times, the judge had to actually move him to a separate courtroom because he became so disruptive. Yesterday, during closing arguments, he appealed to the jury, saying that he didn't intend to do this, but the jury ultimately deciding that, yes, this act was intentional. He was found guilty on 6 counts of intentional homicide, as well as a host of other charges. It's worth noting that those counts of intentional homicide require a mandatory life sentence. Now, we just heard moments ago from some of the victim family members speaking to the press about today's verdict, including the son of Jenny Sorensen, one of the victims killed that day. Take a listen.
In the morning, my 5-year-old daughter came up to me and handed me this necklace with my mom's ashes in it, and she told me to take my mom with us for the sentencing. So she was with us today, and I just want to thank everyone for what they did today. And one last thing, my mom always used to tell us when we were kids in our family that she always said, angels watch over you guys. So I just want to say angels watch over you guys and turn on those blue lights tonight.
Now, prosecutors thanked the jury for their verdict in this case, saying that justice was served. But of course, the officials here also noting that nothing can bring back the loved ones of these family members that are here today, including the 6 that were killed, the dozens and dozens that were injured. It's worth noting that some of the people who were injured that day are still recovering from those injuries.
Right now, we can make a major...
All right. Don't want to listen to you right now. We're talking about Brooks. So, with that, and I did look at into a couple things before or while they were doing the video. This is not the longest sentence ever handed down to somebody. Not even close, by the way. They're talking 762 years for just the additional charges, the assault with a vehicle. With a dangerous weapon, rather. But the mandatory minimum life sentences, they did translate that out to be approximately 900 years is what they have for that. The longest prison sentence I went over, it's actually in the Guinness Book of World Records. Dude, imagine being in the Guinness Book of World Records for that. And I did take into account for multiple counts. There was somebody in Alabama that had the longest for a single count. So we've got 2 there. Let me get this one over here too. The longest for a single count is this one here out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. In 1981, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Dudley Wayne Kaiser received the longest single sentence of 10,000 years for murdering his wife. I should actually pin this and send this over to KTZed and see if she can figure out why they gave him such a long sentence for murdering his wife. He then received 2 further life sentences for murdering his mother-in-law and a college student. I'm curious as to why they gave 10,000 years for one single count. That's interesting. We're going to put a pin in that. See if we can't figure out why. The longest on multiple counts goes to somebody who should have just gone straight into the wood chipper, and that is Charles Scott Robinson, and he got 30,000 years. The longest jail term to a single person on multiple counts went to Charles Scott Robinson, an American kitty diddler, child rapist, who was sentenced on December 23rd, 1994, by a judge in Oklahoma City to 30,000 years. The jury have recommended 5,000 years for each of the 6 counts against him. Again, curiosity coming to this as to why these are such long sentences. Now, I could see if this guy got the max mandatory minimum for like 5,000 counts. if he was that bad of a person. But 5,000 years against him for each of the 6 counts, so... Either way, hopefully it'll be long enough to keep Mr. Brooks off the street forever, and we'll put a pin in that, and we'll ask KTZed to go and do true crime and look into why those were so long. All right, let's grab a couple local ones on this story. Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Darrell Brooks, sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms and hundreds of additional years for the Waukesha Christmas Parade attack. From Jim Riccioli and Quinn Clark. Let's see. So, 17 and a half years for each of the 61 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety, total of 762 years, and 305 years of extended supervision, and 25 years for each of the 6 hit-and-run counts running concurrent to the reckless endangerment charges. In all, beyond his life sentences, he was sentenced to more than 1,200 years, including extended supervision. For each life sentence given for the 6 deceased victims, the gallery, mainly consisting of victims of the tragedy, erupted into applause. While Darrow allowed the applause for those who died in the attack, she asked they remain quiet for the rest of the sentencing. Despite the gallery's applause, their faces remained somber, many sniffing back tears. One day after loved ones and victims of the Waukesha Christmas Parade tragedy presented the impact statements ahead of the sentencing of Brooks, Brooks himself spoke for more than 2 hours ahead of what was expected to be a life sentence. They're still trying to lighten him too, by the way. More than 40 victims and family members of victims either took to the stand or submitted written statements, almost all directly addressing Brooks angrily and bluntly. Most also asked Waukesha County Circuit Judge Jennifer Darrow to ensure Brooks would live out his life in prison, with some wishing him only pain for the lives he took or shattered. 6 people died, and at least another 61 others were injured when a red Ford Escape SUV driven by Brooks tore through the holiday parade. Not Brooks himself, but the Ford Escape. On November 21st, 2021, the attack left in its wake what police called a chaotic atmosphere as authorities and others scrambled to help victims over a 4-block stretch. Interesting to note the editorializing of this article, because this is the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, which in and of itself, before it was bought by the USA Today, was a left-wing rag. So they're going to come back out here to try to say, no. Don't look at anything else. Don't look at any of the statistics. And from WISN 12. Mr. Brooks, no one is safe from you, Judge Darrow says before sentencing him to life in prison.
The survivor.
And I think we will get video of that. I think that's what that's going to be. Waukesha County Judge Jennifer Darrow sentenced Darrell Brooks to 6 life sentences, 1 for each person that he killed when he drove the Waukesha Christmas Parade last November. Frankly, Mr. Brooks, no one is safe from you. The community can only be safe if you are behind bars, she said.
On counts 1 through 6.
Brooks spoke earlier in the afternoon on behalf of himself. What happened on November 21st, 2021 was not an attack, Brooks said before he was sentenced. Not only am I sorry for what happened, I'm sorry you cannot see what's truly in my heart. You cannot see the remorse that I have in my heart. Unmasked, Brooks apologized for killing the 6 people and hurting more than 60 others when he drove through the Waukesha Christmas Parade in November of 2021. Brooks' mother and grandmother were among 3 people who spoke on his behalf. They told the court Brooks suffers from mental health issues. Darrell has suffered from bipolar since the age of 12. It was that disorder that caused him to drive through the crowd, Brooks' grandmother, Dr. Mary Edwards, said. Brooks quickly turned combative again with Darrow and he was removed to the adjacent courtroom. Darrow was brought to tears, describing the horrific images and evidence shown at the trial. It's hard not to think about what I watched and not have this reaction. These were images that frankly kept me up at night when I saw over and over and over, Duro said. Ultimately, the judge told Brooks his mental health issues did not cause the carnage that day. Let's listen.
This court is imposing a life sentence without the possibility or eligibility for extended supervision consecutive to one another. One life sentence for Virginia Sorensen. One life sentence for Leanna Owen. One life sentence for Tamara Durand. One life sentence for Jane Kulik. One life sentence for Bill Hospel. And one life sentence for Jackson Sparks. I've considered the enhancer and the additional 5 years that I could impose, but I don't need to really order that because I've not made him eligible for extended supervision, and it would only be to increase his time on initial confinement. But make no mistake, Mr. Brooks, you use that vehicle as a battering ram, no different than, frankly, a firearm. On counts 7 through 67, these are 61 counts of first-degree recklessly endangering safety. These charges alone and these convictions without the enhancer carry a maximum of 12 and a half years. Because of the enhancer, a total of 17 and a half years. And under Wisconsin law, the 5 years is added to the initial term of confinement. So what could be 7.5 years is a maximum of 12.5 years.
And now, again, the big question there is, does he make it all those years? And I don't know if that's going to be the case. So that's what we see for Darrell Brooks. Oh, we got some more here.
What happened on November 21st, 2021 was not an attack.
Tonight, Darrell Brooks' final words before learning his fate.
Not only am I sorry for what happened, I'm sorry that you could not see what's truly in my heart, that you cannot see the remorse that I have.
Brooks, unmasked, apologized for killing 6 people and hurting more than 60 others when he drove through the Christmas parade last November. Brooks's mother and grandmother among 3 people who spoke on his behalf. They told the court Brooks suffers from mental health issues.
Darrell has suffered from bipolar since the age of 12. And it was that disorder that caused him to drive through that crowd.
Brooks' sentencing quickly turned combative once again with Judge Jennifer Darrow.
Do not interrupt me.
Remove me then.
Listening from the adjacent courtroom, the judge was brought to tears describing the horrific images and evidence shown at trial.
It's hard not to think about what I watched and not have this reaction. Those were images that frankly kept me up at night, that I saw over and over and over.
Ultimately, the judge telling Brooks his mental health issues did not cause the carnage that day.
All right, and most of this, we've looked at this. Actually, it looks like both of our senators came together too. Tammy Baldwin and Ron Johnson introduced a bipartisan resolution to remember the anniversary of the Waukesha Christmas Parade tragedy on November 21st, 2021. The Senate resolution honors the 6 people who were killed.
There are many.
So that's what we have for that. Let's look into some election news. Looking in first at the Google tracker on the election track. The Dems hold 50, 48 plus 2 independents that caucus with Democrats. GOP 49, as nothing has changed for that. We won't see anything change off that until the runoff next month. The House. Google has finally called a majority for the Republicans, with a few more seats that they could pick up as they go. So the majority is going to be wafer thin, but it is going to be there at this point, which means the spending fire hose will stop. On the governor's races, yes, this one's all done, all called. Well, no, I'm sorry, that's not all called. We're still waiting on Alaska, but this looks like this is going to be 26-24. So, kind of, and I don't have a lot of election stuff now, more talking about the leadership now. Just a couple more races that have come in at this point, but like I said yesterday, with Trump coming out and announcing, the congressional races are now over. And we are at a point where we already know what this is, and everything else that happens here is going to be pretty much an afterthought. I think the only big focus is going to be what happens with the Boebert race as it goes. Looking at the Hill to start with, now that all the elections are over, the next elections can come up here. From the Hill, a GOP lawmaker announces 2024 challenge to Manchin. From Alexander Bolton. West Virginia Representative Alex Mooney announced Tuesday that he will run for Senator Joe Manchin's seat in 2024, declaring him all in and bashing Manchin as a liberal Democrat. He's actually probably not far off at that point. Like, I would have said maybe a year ago that Manchin is kind of based and he's kind of holding the filibuster into place and everything else, but really when he sold everybody down the river for the Inflation Production Act, I kind of figured out what the grift was. Hold all the inflation until right up to the election, and you can get conservatives to still call you a hero. Mooney, who was just re-elected to a 5th House term, is the first serious challenger to jump into what could turn into a competitive Republican primary in a state that former President Trump was 68.6% of the vote in 2020. I'm announcing right now that I'm officially running for the U.S. Senate for the seat that's open in 2 years that Joe Manchin currently is in, and I'm all in, Mooney told Hoppy Kercheval, the host of West Virginia Metro News' Talkline. Mooney noted that he won 66% of the vote in his election last week to represent West Virginia's 2nd congressional district and declared, "I'm not happy with the U.S. Senate results," referring to the failure of Republicans to take the Senate majority. Republicans need to take the West Virginia seat in 2 years for the sake of this country, he said. He called Manchin the chief enabler of Joe Biden, referring to the senator's vote in August for a sweeping bill to set corporate minimum tax, spend $370 billion to fight climate change, and lower prescription drug costs. I think he's a liberal Democrat, and West Virginia doesn't deserve that anymore, and it has to be changed, he said. Manchin, who turned 75 in August. Really? Wow. What moisturizer do you use, dude? Hasn't said whether he'll run for a 4th Senate term in 2 years. Wow, I wouldn't have guessed 75. I would have said mid-60s, maybe. Don't get me wrong, he's no spring chicken, but yeah, I would have guessed 64, 65, something like that. Wow. Mooney may face a primary race against West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, who told The Hill last week that he's looking very closely at the Senate race. Morrisey would bring a big campaign war chest to any primary battle. He and his allies say they have the capacity to raise at least $12 million for a statewide primary. And of course, these races are just going to keep getting more and more expensive. Partially because, all of our movies suck. We don't have any really good contemporary authors anymore. And half of us won't even pay attention to sports because they went ahead and said, oh, well, let's just put the name of Jacob Blake on the back of our helmets. This has become the pop culture, and this is what they're pouring bunches of money into because, well, again, we're not getting crap out of Hollywood. That may be why Mooney wants to be the first out of the gate in announcing his plans to challenge Manchin. The West Virginia congressman, however, pointed out that Shelley Moore Capito announced her intention to run for Senate in November of 2012 for the 2014 election. Mooney also said that he will support Trump's bid for the White House if he announces his plans to run for the GOP presidential nomination in 2024. So, I guess we'll see. And really, honestly, one of the first things that I see with this is probably actually, for two reasons, a big incentive for Manchin to stay like a hawk on the filibuster no matter what happens in the Georgia runoff race. For Manchin to stay extremely on board with holding the filibuster at bay. Because he's up, and if he's either going to run again, he's screwed if he nixes the filibuster. And if he doesn't run again, his opponent is screwed if he nixes the filibuster. Not only that, in West Virginia, a non-incumbent is going to face an uphill battle on the Democrat side. I'm just going to put that right out there. An incumbent faces an uphill battle for a statewide race in West Virginia. So he's got to keep his toes out to the fire, lest he give up that seat to the GOP side. Kercheval asked Mooney about allegations that he violated House ethics rules by taking a vacation with his family paid for by HSP Direct LLC, a company that received money from his campaign. Mooney dismissed the allegation as a distraction. I think the left is using attacks raiding Mar-a-Lago and things like that as a political tool now. He said, I run on the issues. Well, we'll see what happens with that, but I don't see, after the Inflation Production Act, Manchin getting another term, even if he does run. And again, at 75, he might not even do that. But we'll see. Out of Los Angeles. Stolen car! Karen Bass elected first female mayor of Los Angeles. From Travis Schlepp. Karen Bass will be the next mayor of Los Angeles, according to projections by the Associated Press. The AP has called the race in Bass's favor around 3:35 p.m. Wednesday. Bass currently leads Caruso by 46,578 votes, with 74% of the ballots counted. Bass, who represents the California's 37th district, will become the first woman to be elected mayor of Los Angeles and the second black person to hold the position. 1 week ago, when polls closed, Caruso carried an overnight lead in the race to replace incumbent Mayor Eric Garcetti, who is termed out and is awaiting confirmation as ambassador to India. Since then, Bass has outpaced Caruso, quickly closing the gap before ultimately overtaking him. She received the support from several top Democrats during her campaign, including Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Nancy Pelosi. That should be disqualifying right there. As mayor, Bass said that solving the homeless crisis would be the top priority for the city. Well, we'll see. I'm actually willing to give you the benefit of the doubt because we're in a situation where you can't really make it a whole lot worse at this point. So, grab some popcorn and we'll watch. We'll see what happens with that. Let's talk leadership. From the Hill, McCarthy wins GOP vote for speakership handily over right-wing challenge, from Emily Brooks. House Republicans nominated Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy to be a speaker in a closed-door conference meeting on Tuesday after he faced last-minute protest challenge from Andy Biggs, a former chairman of the conservative House Freedom Caucus. McCarthy won easily, 188-31, in the internal conference meeting, but in the eyes of Biggs and his supporters, the goal was merely to demonstrate that McCarthy lacks the support to seize the gavel when the full House meets to choose the Speaker early next year. And that's what I've been saying from the beginning. I talk about my Discord conversations both in our Discord, which if you have not joined, it's in the description on YouTube and it's floating through the chat on the Twitch side. I've talked about this before. I think that Nancy Pelosi is going to be the speaker again. I think there's a better than 50% chance that that's the case. Do I think that the Freedom Caucus will vote for Pelosi? No, but they don't have to. All they need to do is muster up 5 votes for Andy Biggs and Pelosi speaker. That's all they have to do. Because she will manage to get her crew lockstep. And all she really has to do is say, oh, do you guys want to have the Republican Party? Do you really want them to have a speakership? What are we going to do? Come on, get in lockstep behind me. She doesn't have to get 218 votes at that point. And all it would take on the current projections would be 5 Freedom Caucus members saying, you know what? No, I don't like McCarthy. The 31 votes opposing McCarthy easily met that threshold, raising immediate questions about how McCarthy, who failed to ascend as Speaker in 2015, will make up the difference between now and then. The secret ballot House Republican Conference vote is just the first step for McCarthy to take hold of the gavel. He must win a majority in the public vote on the House floor, at least 218 votes, assuming a fully sworn-in House, on the first day of the next Congress on January 3rd. In 2015, was it Boehner or was it Paul Ryan at that point? I don't remember. Let's find out. Who was House Speaker in 2016? It was Paul Ryan. The secret ballot House Republican Conference vote is just the first step for McCarthy to take hold of the gavel. He must win a majority in a public vote on the House floor, at least 218 votes, assuming a fully sworn-in House on the first day of the next Congress on January 3rd. Tuesday's vote came as the final breakdown of the House control remains unknown, with around a dozen races undecided and election projections putting Republicans just 1 vote shy of securing the majority. No, they've called it at this point. The exact size of the slimmer than expected majority will have major implications for the rest of McCarthy's path to the gavel. Since he will be able to spare only a handful of defectors on the House floor, rules changes and committee assignments may be among the bargaining chips McCarthy uses to woo opponents back to his side before January 3rd. Chip Roy, a Freedom Caucus member who nominated Biggs for Speaker during the conference meeting on Tuesday, said that his position on McCarthy's chances at becoming Speaker remain unchanged after Tuesday's nomination. No one has 218 or close as needed. We have to sit down and establish the fundamental changes needed, Roy said in a statement. In a press conference, McCarthy said that he thinks that he will have the votes by January to become the Speaker, pointing out that former Speaker Ryan and current Speaker Pelosi similarly fell short of 218 in their internal party nominations before later securing the speakership of the House floor. But he acknowledged that it could be tough. Look, we have our work cut out for us. We've got to have a small majority. We've got to listen to everybody in our conference, McCarthy said. But Biggs said on former Trump advisor Steve Bannon's War Room podcast on Tuesday that there are a significant number of hard no's for McCarthy in the House GOP. It only takes 5. Just keep that in mind. From Politico, McCarthy's next step on the GOP tightrope, navigating concessions to conservatives. From Olivia Beavers and Jordain Carney. Didn't Jordain Carney used to write for The Hill, I thought? Now that McCarthy has won the House GOP speakership nomination, his real work begins. McCarthy's victory over internal critics on Tuesday marked the starting gun for a 7-week marathon. With his majority looking much thinner than many in both parties expected, he will need to persuade almost all of the 36 members who opposed him on Tuesday's secret ballot to back him for the gavel in the public floor vote on January 3rd. While most of the conference's anti-McCarthy votes went to Freedom Caucus challenger Andy Biggs, 5 Republicans wrote in a different name for Speaker, and 1 abstained for a total of 37 in opposition, drawing a map for the Californians' rocky path ahead to 218 votes. Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania remarked on the effect of the chamber's narrow margins with a quip Democrats might appreciate. Everyone's a Joe Manchin. Fitzpatrick helped nominate McCarthy on Tuesday, however, and stressed that the current minority leader has earned the right to be Speaker. No. I wouldn't go that far. The House GOP on Wednesday moves on to a proposed conference rules, with the debate set to continue after Thanksgiving, and McCarthy now has less room to maneuver than he might have anticipated as he edges towards offering institutional concessions to the Freedom Caucus, the Trump-aligned group that helped block his ascent to the speakership in 2015, emboldened moderates and growing uncomfortable with what they perceive as backdoor deals with the party's hardliners. More than 50 members of the Republican Main Street Partnership met on Wednesday to discuss their legislative priorities and how they plan to flex their muscles as the second largest GOP group on Capitol Hill. A Republican familiar with the sit-down told Politico. I think this is a new article. Oh, no, it's not. Meanwhile, some GOP lawmakers who backed McCarthy Tuesday end up siding with the Freedom Caucus on the rules concessions they're seeking. Among those requests, tools to undermine the GOP leader, including a restoration of the speaker deposing move known as a motion to vacate the chair, and diluting the influence of McCarthy and his allies, doling out the committee assignments. The more influence McCarthy loses there, the fewer carrots he has to offer his skeptics. Jim Jordan, a one-time McCarthy opponent turned key ally, threw his support behind conservatives' proposed rule changes, calling them good common sense things. So, that'll be interesting. Again, my big thing is I think there's a better than 50-50 shot that Pelosi still gets this. On the other chamber, McConnell reelected as Senate leader despite historic challenge from Scott. From Trish Turner, Rachel Scott, Allison Pecorin, and Alexandra Hutzler. Now, important to note with this, McConnell does not need to go before the full Senate to become the majority or minority leader. This is only an internal in-party vote. From Trish Turner, Rachel Scott, Allison Pecorin, and Alexandra Hutzler, rather. I think I read those already. The Turtle Man on Wednesday was comfortably reelected as the GOP leader in the upper chamber despite a challenge, his first in 15 years, and despite intra-party finger-pointing over the GOP's disappointing performance in the midterms last week. McConnell faced opposition from Rick Scott, who mounted a historic campaign for the post atop the Republican conference. The leader, well, I'm going to say right off the bat that Rick Scott would not have been a better choice. There are numerous senators who would have been a better choice than Rick Scott to mount the challenge. The leadership vote done by secret ballot behind closed doors in the ornate old Senate chamber was 37-10, with one member voting present, per Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. The conference met for 3.5 hours. An effort led by Ted Cruz to postpone Wednesday's leadership vote also failed, with supporters garnering 16 votes. Per 2 GOP aides, he and his supporters pushed for the delay because they wanted the party to be squarely focused on the December 6th Georgia runoff race, which could deliver one extra voting member to the conference if Republican candidate Herschel Walker is successful over Raphael Warnock. I just don't understand why we would say to Herschel Walker, please, 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 please go win the Senate seat. But we're not interested in what you have to say. We don't want you to have a voice in our elections, said Josh Hawley, who supported the motion to delay the vote. I just think that's wrong. Senate GOP aides, however, confirmed that Walker could have participated in Wednesday's vote, but he was busy campaigning back in his state. In a news conference following the vote, McConnell said that they had a good discussion about what happened in the election and what happens in the next election. I think everybody in our conference agrees that we're going to give it our best shot to finish the job in Georgia and to concentrate on that for the next month. The stolid Kentuckian, who is currently on track to break former Senator Mike Mansfield's record for longest serving leader in the history, had not previously faced any challenges to his role. The Scott move, recently pushed by former President Trump, surprised many. Who would be a better Republican Senate Majority Leader than Mitch McConnell? Feel free to throw some names out there. Rand Paul is my vote. Who else would be better? Who else would be a better Senate Majority Leader? Not Cruz, not Hawley. I don't care for either one of those two people. Obviously not Ron Johnson. Man, I'm thinking Rand Paul is it. Considering that's the only one I can think of right off the bat. Not Rick Scott, obviously. That's going to be a hard no. I'm not a big fan of Hawley. Who else? I don't know. I'm drawing a blank right now, apparently. Let's talk about the DeSantis feud. From the Daily Wire, Ron DeSantis addresses rumors of GOP civil war between him and Trump. From Daily Wire News. This is completely astroturfed still. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis downplayed Wednesday's suggestion that there was a civil war brewing between himself and former President Trump for the party's 2024 presidential nomination. DeSantis made the remarks in response to the question while he was speaking in Matlaca, Florida, with officials about the state's Hurricane Ian recovery efforts. Look, we just finished this election, okay? DeSantis said. People need to chill out for a little bit on some of this stuff. I mean, seriously, we just ran an election. We have the Georgia runoff coming, which is very important to Republicans to win that Georgia runoff. I mean, I know around the country, Florida was kind of the biggest bright spot. It was not so bright in many other parts of the country. It was a substandard performance given the dynamics that are at play. Let's watch.
Look, I think we just finished this election. Okay, people just need to chill out a little bit on some of this stuff. I mean, seriously, we just ran an election. We have this Georgia runoff coming, which is very important for Republicans to win that Georgia runoff. I mean, I know around the country, Florida was kind of the biggest bright spot. It was not so bright in many other parts of the country. It was a substandard performance given the dynamics that are at play. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. But I think what people like me who've been given the opportunity to continue is, okay, let's do something with that. And the reason why we won historic victory is at the end of the day, we led, we delivered, and we had your back when you needed us. That is why we won big.
So, I don't know. Again, the big one that comes off of this is the fact is they're trying to astroturf this, and you know there are people out there that are screaming 12th dimensional chess, and Trump is just going after DeSantis to try to get the media to defend him, which I mean is a possibility, but I don't know. I don't entirely buy it either. So that's what we see for that. More on that feud. DeSantis draws contrast with Trump as party's hunts for 2024 alternative. From Alex Eisenstadt. While former President Trump was announcing his 2024 comeback, campaign Tuesday night, his chief potential Republican primary rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, was 168 miles to the north, outlining a different electoral path forward for the party. During a closed-door appearance before the Republican Governors Association meeting at the Waldorf Astoria in Orlando, the governor gave a detailed explanation on how he scored a lopsided re-election last Tuesday, including examples laden with implicit contrast to the former president who went unmentioned. DeSantis argued forcefully against the widely shared Trump-era conventional wisdom that the party couldn't appeal simultaneously to suburban and rural voters, saying that he won overwhelmingly with suburbanites while also racking up massive Saddam Hussein margins in the state's rural areas, according to a recording of the one-hour appearance obtained by Politico. And while Trump's attacks on the use of mail ballots have complicated the GOP voters' turnout efforts and sparked a reckoning within the party since the midterms, DeSantis noted that he had aggressively pushed for his supporters to cast their ballots before Election Day in Florida, resulting in him killing the Democrats in early voting. The appearance came during a two-day conference where governors, donors, and senior party officials grappled with last week's disappointing midterm elections and conveyed the desire for a new blueprint for the party, with the Florida governor and other prospective candidates waiting in the wings. Many of the attendees said it was time for Republicans to move forward, blaming Trump for their failure. I think the party needs to move on because I think at the end of the day, extremism has come to be associated with the former president, said outgoing Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, who attributed this month's losses to out-of-mainstream Trump-backed candidates who simply did not perform. Honk honk. One of the most popular governors in the nation, Baker, decided against running for re-election as Trump was moving back as the primary challenger. As Trump was moving to back a primary challenger. The candidate, who Republicans ended up nominating, lost overwhelmingly last week, giving Democrats the Mass governorship for the first time since 2015. Elsewhere, Republicans failed to defeat sitting Democrat governors in states including Michigan, Wisconsin, and Kansas. Wisconsin is a honk-honk there as well. While the party captured the Nevada governorship, they lost their hold on 3 other states. And they keep trying to say that's the MAGA effect. Well, Ron Johnson still won. I will remind you of that. Lauren Boebert is currently still winning, and the Donald has a very winning record on picking candidates to match their districts. He is having trouble in statewide races, I will admit. But again, I will point out the fact that I didn't vote for Ron Johnson, but I did vote for Tim Michels. Behind the scenes at the RGA meeting, Republicans vented during one closed-door session former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, a former Trump ally turned critic. No, he is another one who changed his position to MAGA when he realized it would net him some power. And now, because now it's looking like the MAGA thing's coming out of power, Chris Christie is going to throw Trump under the bus. By the way, prediction within the next year, Ron Johnson throws Trump under the bus too. That's what I see coming off of this. Because going down the Trump path does not garner you a bunch of power. He received applause when he blamed Trump for the midterm defeats. Axios was the first to report Christie's comments. Bobby Kilberg, a North Virginia-based donor, also sharply criticized the former president, calling Trump a clear and present danger to the Republican Party. In an illustration of the anxiety gripping the GOP, those who've previously aligned themselves with Trump expressed little desire to weigh in. I'm not going there, Mike DeWine, who was backed by Trump in his successful 2022 re-election, when asked if he'd support the former president's comeback bid. So there is the civil war that's going on there, but it's, I think, mostly astroturfed. And people who didn't have a spine to begin with are showing the fact that they don't have a spine. Another one here, 2 GOP mega donors, both Trump allies, announced they will not support his 2024 presidential campaign. From Ryan Saavedra. Two top allies of former President Trump announced Wednesday, the day after Trump announced his 2024 presidential campaign, that they will not support the former president. Steven Schwartzman, a billionaire investor. No, don't worry, I'm not going to go down that road. You'll have to tune into the Daily Ignoramus to get going down that road. Said in a statement early on Wednesday that he would not support Trump in the Republican Party primaries for president. America does better when its leaders are rooted in today and tomorrow, not today and yesterday, Schwartzman said. It is time for the Republican Party to turn to a new generation of leaders, and I intend to support one of them in the presidential primaries. Later in the day, Ronald Lauder, a billionaire heir to the Estee Lauder fortune, announced through his spokesperson that he would not support Trump's new campaign for president. The spokesperson did not indicate who Lauder would support in 2024, but a report from CNBC noted that he is repeatedly given to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Citadel founder Ken Griffin, a Republican megadonor who's worth approximately $30 billion, recently took a shot at the former president, saying, "I'd like to think that the Republican Party is ready to move on from somebody who hasn't been for this party who has been for this party a three-time loser." Honk honk. Griffin has given millions to DeSantis' political operation and says that DeSantis is going to run on a record of just unbelievable accomplishment. And this is my fear right now. That the big mega donors, the warmongers, the people who want to see us back in the Middle East especially, are the ones who are going to pull the string and make all this happen. And I'm telling you again right now, if we go back to business as usual in the GOP, evangelocon, spread the crusades around the Middle East and use our military might to spread Christianity, or use our military might to put donations from Raytheon at the pockets of senators, but sell it to the American people as trying to spread Christianity and democracy in the Middle East, I'm out. I will not vote for your party if we go back to business as usual. Mono-party bullcrap. I won't do it. I will not do it. End of story. The greatest gift that Donald Trump gave to the world, because, of course, his tax cut sunsetted, so that really wasn't the greatest gift. The greatest gift that Donald Trump gave to the world was that for a time, and that's probably not going to last very long, given the people who are lining up to go behind Ron DeSantis, is that war was a dirty word in the mouths of the GOP. For 5 years, war was a dirty word in the mouths of the GOP. And again, if we're back to business as usual, world police, Bushite, Bushism, Cheneyism, I'm out. I'm done. I would vote for Joe Jorgensen before I voted for that crap again. And you guys have heard me. I have said terrible things about Joe Jorgensen. I have said horrible things about that woman while hosting a web show with her social media director. Noted. I have said terrible things. That's why that's a big part of why I said that I have no intention to support Ron DeSantis. My initial observation with DeSantis was, yes, he says all the cool things. He says, and he does all the things that his conference wants him to do. Oh, look. I'm making an executive order that says that we can't do this, that we have to stay open, that we can't do the wokeism. Okay, but you did it by executive order. That was my first suspicion with him. But again, now it's the matter of who's lining up behind Ron DeSantis right now. The Cheneys, the big mega donors, the Ben Shapiros of the party. You know, the Ben Shapiros who think that the U.S. military is the Israeli private military. With those people lining up behind him, I can't do it. let's talk about the digital dollar, because of course I had to pass over this one yesterday. From Reuters, banking giants and New York Fed start a 12-week digital dollar pilot. From Lannon Wynn. And before we start, no. Global banking giants are starting a 12-week digital dollar pilot with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the participants announced on Tuesday. Citigroup, HSBC Holdings, MasterCard, and Wells Fargo are among the financial companies participating in the experiment alongside the New York Fed's Innovation Center. They said in a statement, the project, which is called the Regulated Liability Network, will be conducted in a test environment and use simulated data, the New York Fed said. The pilot will test how banks using digital dollar tokens in a common database can help speed up payments. Earlier this month, Michelle Neal, head of the New York Fed's Markets Group, says it sees promise using a central bank digital dollar to speed up settlement time in currency markets. And that is all that they have to say about that. So, this is a short little read to tell you that they're making a government cryptocurrency, which means that the next thing that they will do is they will fight to destroy all other cryptocurrencies because the government hates competition. Why is this dangerous? Let me point a couple things out to you on this. With cryptocurrencies, with things like Bitcoin, with things like Shiba Inu, which I carry, with things like Doge, which I also carry, with things like that, although, again, they irritate certain people in the chat, Ron, because if you can't hold it or mold it, you should have already sold it. I understand that. But with that being the case, you have a store of value, imagined or not. Because, let's face it, the dollar is imagined at this point. That cannot be manipulated by the government. And that is a threat to their power. Not only, by the way, if we go to a digital token, a digital currency, does this give the government the power to come back and shut you down if you say something that they don't like, especially if it's controlled by the Federal Reserve. Oh, you have a profile picture that says "End the Fed"? Oh, well, I guess the Fed has got to end your wallet. I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson. You said you were against us going and giving aid to Ukraine. I'm sorry. But you cannot use your bank account anymore. Those are the rules, man. I'm sorry. It's not that the government is against having a cryptocurrency, a digital currency, a digital coin. It's that they're against there being one that they can't control. Now, as far as the Bitcoin goes, yes, they can control that to an extent. Because, with the exception of a few places in major metropolitan areas, and even at some point in minor metropolitan, no, not even in minor metropolitan areas, but in major metropolitan areas, in order to buy anything with Bitcoin, you have to first convert it back into the US dollar. The same with most global trade. One of the things that they're fighting so hard with the petrodollar, trying to keep that, and BRICS coming in to try to force America down and trade everything else in the BRICS dollar, not the US dollar, the oil dollar. They don't want there to be out there a currency that they can't control. But the other side of that is, even with most of our dollars being digital at this point, ones and zeros in a system, because we have direct deposit, we have debit cards, we have online transactions, and we have everything else that goes along in that direction. Still, if you want to do something illicit or illegal, what do you do? What do you do right away? Get cash. I'm sure that most of you haven't at this point. I think most of you are married. But if you want to go out and get a hooker, you do it in cash. If you want to buy a bunch of Coke, and not the kind that comes in a red can. You do it in cash. If you want to buy a big bag and make those special brownies that make you feel funny in the body, you go out and you take cash. Because it can't be traced. Well, it can be, but not very easily. From CoinDesk. Big banks, New York Fed, start to test digital tokens for wholesale transactions. From Jamie Crawley. A group of major banks at the Federal Reserve of New York have started to test the use of digital tokens representing digital dollars to improve how central bank money is settled between institutions. Oh, I bet you they would take Shiba. But the problem there is that when you pay for them with Shiba, then you have a ledger showing that you made that transaction, which is very easily linked back to you. They'll take anything of value. You just don't want to have that ledger out there showing that you committed the crime. Because in most places in this country, that is still a crime. Citigroup, HSBC, BNY Mellon, and Wells Fargo are among the banks taking part, along with payments giants MasterCard and the New York Fed announced on Tuesday. The 12-week proof of concept pilot program will explore the use of a platform known as the Regulated Liability Network, or RLN, whereby banks issue tokens that represent customers' deposits that are settled on a central bank reserve on a shared distributed ledger. So it's blockchain-like. The project will be conducted in a test environment using only simulated data. While many central banks are developing or considering developing retail central bank digital currencies, which are forms of digital money for use by the public, many are also testing wholesale CBDCs, which are fiat money, in token form for exchange among financial institutions to improve existing clearing and settlement processes. Which we already have, by the way. I don't understand why people don't see the fact that this is already a thing. From the street. I think this is all the same information. The POC, proof of concept, will simulate digital money issued by regulated institutions in US dollars, although the concept could potentially be extended to multi-currency operations and regulated stablecoins. The point of concept will simulate tokens that are 100% fungible and redeemable with other forms of money that will include dialogue with the broader US banking community, including community and regional banks. Per Von Zelowitz, director of the New York Innovation Center, said in a statement that the center looks forward to collaborating with members of the banking community to advance research on asset tokenization in the future of the financial market infrastructures that the U.S. and money and banking evolve. The New York Fed said the project will be conducted in a test environment and only use simulated data. The project is not intended to advance any specific policy outcome, nor is it intended to signal the Federal Reserve will make any imminent decisions about the appropriateness of issuing retail or wholesale central bank digital currency, or CBDC, nor how one would necessarily be designed. Then why are they spending all this money on it? How much do you think a program like this cost? And I'm asking that question honestly, too, because there does not appear to be any cost of running a program like this in the article. How much do you think something like that would cost? To set up a simulation with 6 private entities in the Federal Reserve. I'm thinking we're in the $12 to $15 million range. So to drop $12 to $15 million without having some sort of policy prescription in mind, I'm going to call bullcrap on that. All right, we do have some legislative news, but we do have to get out of here pretty soon too, so. Federal judge halts the rapid removal of migrants under the pandemic-era policy. From Quinn Owen over at ABC News, which, again, I was the understanding that this happened a long time ago. A federal judge on Tuesday struck down a Trump-era policy of rapidly expelling migrants from the border in the name of pandemic health precautions. Yeah, didn't this happen like over the summer? The order relied on a decades-old public health law known as Title 42 and was implemented by Trump's admin at the start of the pinko pox pandemic. Authorities at the southern border have carried out more than 2.2 million Title 42 expulsions since it began. Earlier this year, the CDC, under Biden, attempted to pull back the order, but it was held in place by a legal challenge from Republican-led states. That case was rendered moot by Tuesday's ruling, which takes issue with the original basis for conducting the expulsions. Yeah, I thought the Supreme Court struck that down in, July. District Judge Emmett Sullivan ruled the impact on public health was minimal, noting millions of people have crossed into the land since Title 42 removals were first implemented in 2020. Sullivan also wrote that the policy was arbitrary and capricious and violated federal law. The CDC should not have ignored the consequences of sending migrants back to potential harm, Sullivan wrote. Are you serious? It is undisputed that the impact on migrants was indeed dire, he wrote. The ruling hopefully puts an end to one of the most draconian asylum policies this country has ever enacted. ACLU Lee Gallant, lead attorney on the case, said on Tuesday. Immigrant advocates have fought the Title 42 order from the beginning, underscoring the severe limitations it placed on the ability for migrants to apply for humanitarian protections, including asylum. Given the fast-track nature of Title 42 removals, migrants had little to no opportunity to secure legal resources or find an attorney before they were sent back. Under U.S. law, non-citizens on U.S. soil have the right to seek humanitarian relief. Sullivan, in his ruling, noted as well, writing that it's unreasonable for the CDC to assume that it can ignore the consequences of any actions it chooses to take in pursuit of fulfilling its goals, particularly when those actions included the extraordinary decision to suspend the codified procedural and substantive rights of non-citizens seeking safe harbor. So, well, when they get to the border, they can apparently stay now, so we'll see what happens there. From Newsweek, Oregon sheriffs defy voters, refuse to enforce the new gun control measure. From Khalida Raymond. A number of Oregon sheriffs have said they will not enforce Measure 114, a gun control law narrowly passed by voters in the midterms on November 8th. Based. The legislation requires a permit from law enforcement for people to purchase firearms. Applicants would need to complete an approved in-person firearm safety course, pay a fee, provide personal information, submit to fingerprinting and photographing, and pass a federal criminal background check to qualify for a permit. These would be processed by local police chiefs, county sheriffs, and their designees. The measure also bans large-capacity magazines over 10 rounds, except in some circumstances, and creates a statewide firearms database. Large capacity over 10 rounds. Again, I point out, any armament in this house is over 10 rounds. Factory, standard. The Oregon State Sheriff's Association, which represents the 36 elected sheriffs, opposed the measure, arguing that it would have an adverse effect on public safety, forcing agencies to create and fund firearm permit process out of their budgets. However, the association told state officials in July of 2022 that it expected members to uphold any law created by popular vote. Nevertheless, several sheriffs have pledged not to enforce the law in recent days. Sherman County Sheriff Brad Laurie said, "Our office would not enforce Measure 114," Under Sheriff James Burgett told Newsweek on Tuesday. Based. And by the way, if Portland wants this so badly, Portland can pony up the dough. Is Portland the capital, by the way? Salem. Oh, that's the other side of it, too. If Salem wants this so badly, Salem can pony up the dough. From Fox 5 Atlanta. Georgia abortion ban. Judge overturns the state's ban on abortion after 6 weeks. From the Associated Press. Moloch will be pleased. A judge overturned Georgia's ban on abortion starting around 6 weeks into pregnancy, ruling Tuesday that it violates the U.S. Constitution and Supreme Court precedent when it was enacted. But it doesn't now. This is just an administrative hurdle. What is Georgia's heartbeat law? It prohibited most abortions once a detectable human heartbeat is present. Cardiac activity can be detected by ultrasound in cells within an embryo that will eventually become the heart in as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy. That means most abortions in Georgia were effectively banned at a point before many women knew that they were pregnant. Again, I don't buy that. Kara Richardson, a spokesperson for Georgia AG Chris Carr, said in an email that the office intends to pursue an immediate appeal. McBurney's ruling came in a lawsuit that sought to strike down a ban on multiple grounds, including that it violates the Georgia Constitution's right to privacy and liberty by forcing pregnancy and childbirth on women in the state. The lawsuit filed by doctors and advocacy groups in July also argued that Georgia's abortion ban was invalid because it violated the U.S. Constitution and U.S. Supreme Court precedent when it was enacted. McBurney agreed with that argument in his decision. So now they just have to pass it again. This seems like an unnecessary administrative hurdle for something that should have been a states' rights issue to begin with, and not a U.S. decision, but a states' right decision. And I think the last one that we'll cover on is what happened yesterday in the Senate. Same-sex marriage protections clear critical Senate hurdle. From Marianne Levine. The Senate on Wednesday narrowly advanced legislation to protect same-sex marriage, sending it to a near certain passage. In a 62-37 vote, 12 Republicans voted with all Democrats to move forward on the bill after negotiators reached a bipartisan deal to include protections for religious liberty. The vote on final passage could occur as soon as this week. Yeah, I'll bet you anything that changes. We can ease the fear that the millions of same-sex and interracial couples have that their freedoms and their rights could be stripped away, said Tammy Baldwin, who is lead sponsor along with Susan Collins. We are guaranteeing same-sex and interracial couples, regardless of where they live, that their marriage is legal. Headed into the floor vote, only a handful of Republicans, including Senators Mitt Romney, Roy Blunt, and Lisa Murkowski, publicly committed to voting for the modified legislation. Wednesday's vote showed Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer might get what he hoped for when he delayed the bill to protect same-sex marriage rights from coming to the floor in September, agreeing to a Republican request that the chamber take it up after the election. Some Democrats feared they were being played, convinced to take pressure off the opposing party, only to have the GOP tank the legislation later. But negotiators bet that waiting could help solidify support and allow senators to vote without considering the midterms. So, the Republicans got played, is what you're saying. I made the choice to trust the members who had worked so hard in this legislation to wait a little bit longer in order to give the bipartisan process a chance to play out. Schumer said ahead of the vote, no one in a same-sex marriage should have to worry about whether or not their marriage will be invalidated in the future. They deserve peace of mind, knowing their rights will always be protected under the law. Baldwin, along with Sinema, were the lead Democratic negotiators, while Collins worked with Rob Portman and Tom Tillis to shore up GOP votes. During the vote, Baldwin barely stepped more than 3 feet away from the clerk's desk, and Sinema split her time between the GOP cloakroom and the floor where she closely watched the tally. Collins at one point joked to Richard Shelby after he voted no, "You could have surprised everybody." While the House passed the same-sex marriage bill in July with support from nearly 50 House Republicans, the process in the Senate has taken more time amid GOP concerns about religious liberty. If the Senate does pass its version, the legislation will need another vote of approval from the House to head to President Biden's desk. Okay, 2 things. Number 1, my first and foremost for this, because this does involve state taxation, is this should have been a states' rights issue from the start. That's the first part of this, the first thing that I have to say about this. This should not be a federal decision. The states elect the people who issue the licenses, the counties in most cases actually. They elect the people who issue the licenses, so that should be up to the people whether or not that person issues a license or not. That's number 1. But number 2, I actually do have to give the House Democrats credit on something. Because in spite of my beliefs in how this should work, by my federalist nature and the Constitution, my first and foremost thing is, if you don't like a decision by the Supreme Court, legislate it. If you think that something is in danger, instead of relying on the Supreme Court like you did for 50 years on Roe versus Wade, legislate it. You are the body that makes laws. And while I don't like the law, I think this should be a state level thing. This is your job. And now, by the way, the people who made this legislation now have to go home to their districts and tell them, yes, I voted for this as a Republican, or no, I voted against this. And let the people decide their fates in the Senate. Based on the voting record for that. The legislature, the House of Representatives, and the Senate both spent way too long depending on decisions by the Supreme Court, the EPA decision, the Dobbs decision, or the Roe decision, I guess, or Obergefell, or the New York State Pistol and Rifle Association decision. They spent way too much time depending on these things, so they wouldn't have to go home and face their voters. It's one of the things that I like the most about the Supreme Court, and I know a lot of the detractors, a lot of the paid shills and the people who follow the paid shills think that, oh, it's just a conservative court and they're trying to put the women back into the chains. No, actually, the Supreme Court is stepping back and overturning a lot of these decisions, saying this wasn't our job. This was the legislature's job, so go and legislate. And I do like that, because it was the legislature's job. So go and legislate. The people there in the legislature are beholden to the voters. The Supreme Court isn't. If anything, because you keep talking about our democracy is at stake. Oh my God, our democracy. Well, now you're giving in a democratic position. If you like the law, rally enough people behind you and get your representatives to make it a law, rather than relying on 9 unelected people to do it. So no, this should definitely be a states' rights issue, but at least they're legislating it. At least now they have to face the fallout of their consequences, instead of 9 unelected people facing the fallout for it and legislating from the bench. So we will see how this affects the 12. The GOP senators who supported advancing the bill included Joni Ernst of Iowa, Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming, Todd Young of Indiana, Dan Sullivan of Alaska, Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia, and Richard Burr of North Carolina. I think I have actually the full list. These 12: Collins, Portman, Tillis, Blunt, Burr, Capito, Lummis, Murkowski, Romney, Sullivan, Todd Young. So those people will have to go back to their constituents and say, yes, I voted for this. Do you want to give me another chance in Congress, in the Senate after this? Which is how it should have been from the start. Alright, let's do a couple things that I like and a thing that I hate. So, thing that I like number one came right before I got started. Thank you to Arvel for putting this out on Twitter and letting me snag it for you. From NBC News, Moms for Liberty backed school board members fire superintendent ban critical race theory. This is in South Carolina. From Tyler Kincaid, on Tuesday evening, the Berkeley County School District in South Carolina swore in the board members who were elected last week, 6 of whom were endorsed by the conservative activist group Moms for Liberty. Wow, it must be getting up over that 2-hour mark. I'm starting to have trouble talking, oddly enough. I don't even know how long we've been on. 146. Within 2 hours, the school board had voted to fire the district's first black superintendent, terminate the district's lawyer, ban critical race theory, and set up a committee to decide whether certain books and materials should be banned from schools. In addition, the board voted to replace the chair with Mac McQuillan, a local attorney and one of the board members, backed by Moms for Liberty. The rapid moves Tuesday in Berkeley County District, the fourth largest in the state, showed the impact of Moms for Liberty's focus on electing conservative school board members and prompted uproar among some community members in attendance. Moms for Liberty said it has endorsed more than 500 school board candidates across the country this year, 49% of whom have won. The organization's candidates were highly successful in Florida, but they had mixed results in Arkansas, California, Michigan, and other states. Moms for Liberty celebrated the 6 candidates' wins in Berkeley County, for example, flipping a school board in favor of people who value parental rights. 4 of the candidates, including McQuillan, were incumbents, while 2 others were new to the board. They promised more curriculum transparency and fiscal responsibility to put a stop to the woke agenda. Well, good. And this is what you need to do. Your first responsibility, if you are going to live in a representative government, is to choose representatives as local to you as possible. Yes, and I often say this, I often talk about the fact that we put so much stake in who the president is. We talk about it a lot on this program, actually, but we shouldn't. I mean, there are portions of history where people didn't even know who the president was, as far as I know. Because it didn't affect their everyday lives, like it apparently does now. But who does affect your everyday life? The school board, the mayor, the city council, the county commissioner, your state representative, the people who will make decisions that directly affect your life that you still have to see in the grocery store, that he'll still have to look you in the eye when they raise your taxes or make that ordinance against your dog. Those are the people who you should be paying attention to. They always have been the people you should be paying attention to. In my district, District 1, Brian Stile will always, whenever he's home, be surrounded by Capitol Police and security from the Capitol. I would never be able to go up to him and say, hey, why did you vote this way? I would never see him in a grocery store or anything else. But the school board members, I see at least 2 of them on a regular basis. And while I don't know who the mayor is of the city, and I'm actually moving out of it fairly soon, I'm pretty positive, I bet you, if somebody pointed him out to me and say, oh yeah, I've seen that guy in the grocery store. The city council member's the same thing. Local, 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 local. Our friends to the left did this for years, successfully, with nobody running back against them as the Republican Party was so buried in Bushism. But once they set their sights on the Senate and the White House and Congress and the Supreme Court, they kind of left their school board ambitions behind. Which left the opening for people who value liberty to go back in and look at that. So that's definitely something that's good and something for us to watch. The other thing that I like today comes to us from The Blaze. Got a couple back-to-back here from The Blaze about Candace Cameron. Both involving the new network that she's at. Candace Cameron, I actually read the statement on Instagram yesterday. In fact, no, I'm not signed into Instagram on my computer anymore. Never mind. I was going to say I could probably, well, maybe I can get in there really quick. Because we could actually look at the post. Yes, I can. I can get to it from here. Candace Buer. Yep, so I've got the post here as well, but we'll read the Blaze article first. To those who have tried to assassinate my character, I love you. Candace Cameron Buer responds to backlash after saying network will keep traditional marriage at the core. From Alex Nitzberg. Actress Candace Cameron Buer has issued a statement explaining that she loves everyone, including people who attack her online and attempt to smear her character. Buer recently came under fire after telling the Wall Street Journal that Great American Family, a media network she's involved with that produces family-friendly content, will focus on traditional marriage. When asked whether she anticipates the cable channel featuring homosexual couples will, as leads in holiday films, Buer said no, according to the outlet. I think that Great American Family will keep traditional marriage at the core, Buer said, according to the Journal, which reported that the actress is the chief creative officer of Great American Family. Boy, I bet you Netflix is regretting picking up Fuller House at this point. It's certainly the year 2022 and we're aware of the trends, Great American Family CEO Bill Abbott said. There's no whiteboard that says yes this or no, we'll never go there. Hillary Burton Morgan accused Buer and Abbott of being bigots and called them both disgusting. Buer issued a lengthy statement responding to the uproar about her comments regarding Great American Family content. And we can read the statement. Buer says in a 5-slide post, I would like to address my comments on Great American Family's programming as reported in the Wall Street Journal. All of you know who know me know beyond question that I have great love and affection for all people. It absolutely breaks my heart that anyone would ever think I intentionally want to offend and hurt anyone. It saddens me that the media is often seeking to divide us even around a subject as comforting and as merry as Christmas movies. But given the toxic climate in our culture right now, I shouldn't be surprised we need Christmas more than ever. I'm a devoted Christian, which means that I believe that every human being bears the image of God. Because of that, I'm called to love all people, and I do. If you know me, you know that I'm a person who loves fiercely and indiscriminately. My heart yearns to build bridges and bring people one step closer to God, to love others as well, and to simply be a reflection of God's huge love for all of us. To the members of the media responsible for using this opportunity to fan flames of conflict and hate, I have a simple message. I love you, anyway. To those who hate what I value and who are attacking me online, I love you. To those who have tried to assassinate my character, I love you. To everyone reading this, of any race, creed, sexuality, or political party, including those who have tried to bully me with the same name-calling, I love you. I've long wanted to find a home for more faith-based programming. I'm grateful to be an integral part of a young and growing network. had also expressed in my interview, which was not included, that people of all ethnicities and identities have and will continue to contribute to the network in great ways, both in front of and behind the camera, which I encourage and fully support. I've never been interested in proselytizing through my storytelling, but in celebrating God's greatness in our lives throughout the stories I tell. The God we serve is a wildly creative and loving God. He didn't just capture a small part of my heart. He has captured all of my heart. He will be reflected in everything I do and say, in my family, my work, my interactions with people from all walks of life. God's love and God's compassion is front and center. All of that comes from the love that God himself showered upon humanity when he gave the gift of joy and forgiveness in the first Christmas morning 2,000 years ago. It is why I love Christmas stories and sharing true love and true peace with millions of people around the world, and in the sole motivation of pure love. I hope you'll join me in sharing God's hope for all the world this Christmas season. Call that my Christmas wish. Candace Cameron Bure. Based. Based. Now my thing with this is that you do have plenty of secular Christmas programs out there. Netflix ran their one season run of Happy Merry Whatever, in which Ashley Tisdale's character wound up being a lesbian, even though she's married to Chris French in real life. And a host of other secular things, even going down to the stop-motion animation cartoons that we all remember from the 60s and 70s. They're all out there. If you want to have something that's not religiously based, there's nothing... We're not taping your eyes open and forcing you to sit down and watch Great American Family. I don't have cable, but I would actually consider watching Great American Family. It sounds based as hell. Well, I guess hell is not really based, but it sounds completely based, though. And I'm interested to see where this goes, but you know, one of the big parts is one of the hardest parts with that is that when you look at a network like this that might actually become successful, we are going to have nothing but a host of issues out there to try to drag it back down, to try to make sure that you don't like it, that you don't get to see it, that you don't get to enjoy it. And another one, kind of in the same vein, although this one might turn in the other direction. Hallmark Channel actress ditches LA for rural Tennessee. My Christmas movie characters have rubbed off on me. From Amanda Harding. Well, Danica, leave your LA voting in LA. That's all I have to say. Go enjoy the fruits of your labor and the money. Just leave your voting patterns in LA. Otherwise, you'll bring the same things back with you. Yet another celebrity is leaving LA for the new way of life. Danica McKellar, best known for her role in The Wonder Years, but has more recently become a darling of the Hallmark Channel, announced that she's ditching LA to pursue a different kind of life in rural Tennessee. She also said the movie she's been working on helped inspire the decision. My husband and I have been wanting more nature for a long time. We are the kind ready to not be in the city anymore, the actress told People magazine in a recent interview. I'm just loving the fact that my Christmas movie characters have rubbed off on me. I think it's just a wonderful example of life imitating art. McKellar, one of the many stars who recently switched from Hallmark Channel to the new Great American Family Network, has lived in LA for most of her life, but knew it was time to make a change. Working on Christmas movies has also gotten her excited for the holiday season. I'm going to have a Christmas tree up probably next week. Let's get this going, she told People. The publication noted that the actress and her husband, Scott Sveslowski, moved to Nashville suburb as they're interested in the arts and the music scene. For me, honestly, it's mostly about backyard, McKellar, who has a 12-year-old son from a previous marriage, told People. The Wonder Years alum says she especially enjoys the changing seasons, including the leaves turning different colors in the fall. Well, Katy Berry has talked about moving to Kentucky, but, you know, once again, Katy, don't take your LA liberalism with you. James Vanderbeek moved his wife and 5 kids to a 36-acre ranch in Texas. We're so happy right now, he said of the move. It's been really good for all of us. So with McKellar being a part of Great American Family, I don't think that there's a lot of danger of her going out and taking LA to rural Tennessee. But, you know, it's going to be a cross the fingers thing. We're going to have to wait and hope and see. I have no worry about Candace Cameron doing it. You know, who would have thought that the sister of Kirk Cameron, Reverend Kirk Cameron, would be not based? Because she is totally based. Now for a thing that I hate. From Fox 11. California wrong-way driver crashes into 25 law enforcement recruits, 5 in critical condition. From Kelly Johnson. 25 law enforcement recruits for various agencies across LA County were injured, 5 critically after a CRV going the wrong way plowed into them and hit a light pole during their morning run in Whittier, authorities said. The California Highway Patrol said the incident was reported at 6:25 a.m. Wednesday near the intersection of Mills and Telegraph. Upon impact, firefighters with LA County Fire Station 96 heard a loud crash and immediately rendered aid to the cadets and called for additional resources. Authorities said 20 law enforcement vehicles from various agencies responded to the scene. California Highway Patrol Captain Charlie Sampson said the 22-year-old driver was going southbound on Mills when he veered into the opposing lanes and struck the victims who were running northbound in formation. The CHP is not releasing the driver's name at this stage of the investigation, but said he is a Diamond Bar resident. The driver's family told Fox 11 that he's a good kid who respects the law enforcement community because he comes from a law enforcement family. Does he? I don't know. There is an even chance that this is an accident, but, you know, one of the first things that came out about this, and one of the first things I thought when I saw this, is that we have come into the situation where some of our more left-leaning friends look at the police and the government and they just say enemy, 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 constantly. And I do think that there is a point where some of this could come down the road. I don't know if this was motivated by an ACAB or an F-12 sentiment. I don't know if this was motivated by that. But that was one of the first things that crossed into my mind. That this was intentional. That a person went the wrong way down a road. Apparently this is a person who's well familiar with this area, knew that he was going down a wrong way down a road. Or should have known, rather. And my first question is always, at this point, was this a retaliation for police practices? Or BLM or something like that? We've lived in a situation where people trying to go and do one of the more dangerous jobs in this country could be mowed down at a moment's notice, and we'll never know. And this story disappeared out of the media very quickly, and it's something that we should pay attention to. I would love to see what the results of the investigation were. But I hate the fact that our society has come to the point where we have to wonder whether or not this was motivated by hatred or whether or not this was genuinely an accident. And with that, we're done. Really late, but we gotta head out of here for the day. So, with that, we're done. We're out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat, came and hung out, and talked about the news. We had a pretty busy day earlier on here today. Kind of leveled off at the end of the day, but if you are still just in here lurking, make sure you get one of those last-minute messages in so I can note your name down in the ledger and give you a thank you tomorrow for chatting in the live chat throughout the week here. And we'll be back here tomorrow to talk about more news, more headlines, and more of what's going on in the world. And there's plenty of that, so stick around, come back and hang out. I've got to get out of here, but stick around if you're on Twitch as we go for the raid. We will see you here next time on Contemporary, and until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.